Welcome to the second lecture in the inaugural CCCAP lecture series. It is associated with the 2023 Student Design Competition for a Center for Conversation and Civil Discourse. I am Betsy Masters, Secretary of the CCCAP and adjunct faculty at the Community College of Philadelphia. We are honored to have Senator Tim Kearney, AIA, with us today. He brings a unique point of view as an architect and community leader when it comes to spaces of public conversations and private dialogues. In southeastern Pennsylvania, Senator Kearney, AIA, practices with his partner, Claudia, in their firm, CuetoKEARNEY, where they have designed college dorms, scientific labs, offices, houses, master plans, and lots of other project types. Senator Kearney's public service began with joining his borough's planning commission. Next, he was elected mayor of Swarthmore twice for two terms. There, he helped the community become a leader in environmental protection, sustainability practices, fair and equitable policing practices, and LGBTQ equality. Finally, today, he serves as Pennsylvania State Senator for the 26th District, while continuing to practice architecture. Tim views his work in elected office as an extension of his work as an architect. So as you can see, he's bringing us a very unique point of view. And Senator Kearney, we are delighted to have you here with us today. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Well, thank you, Betsy. It's in all fairness, my wife Claudia really does run the firm now, and I'm really in a back seat because what I was told was going to be a part-time job as a state senator is really, job and a half kind of thing. So, I haven't worked as hard since I was a young architect at Ventura Scott Brown, and and she's doing a wonderful job. The office is still busy and thriving. So as Betsy said, I'm Tim Kearney. I'm an architect. I had a 37 year career in architecture, and then took a weird left turn and got involved in statewide politics. I say weird because I'm the only architect in the legislature, the House or the Senate, and I only know of about 5 other architects that I've been told about by the national AIA who are state senators across the country. So it's true that architects in general do not get all that involved in political life, which is really a shame in a lot of ways. I can tell you that when you're drinking out of the fire hose as a newly elected official trying to figure out what's going on, your training as an architect actually serves you very well in the as you figure things out and make things work. And that's a little bit what I'm going to talk about today. We were asked to speak about sort of discourse and community and interaction and all those kinds of good things. The reasons that I think most of us became architects was because we wanted to really understand the public space. We wanted to understand how people interact with each other. I think one of the real lessons that we learned from the pandemic when we were all isolated in our particular houses was how much we missed that interaction with other people, and how much of a difference in our lives it really made. We saw incredible upticks in really mental health issues that were occurring, certainly with kids in school. It was really kind of shocking to see how sort of tender that whole thing is, how difficult that situation can become. The Attorney General a few years back instituted a program called Safe to Say, which people may be familiar with. It was basically set up as a way to try to reduce violence in public schools or in schools. And the idea was that you could call a hotline and talk to somebody and be anonymous and not get overly involved if it was something you were worried about or something you saw or those kinds of things. And what happened during the pandemic was that over 90% of the calls were about student mental health, not about violence. And yeah, so it's, it's sobering to really see what that means. But I think, a big part of it, from when I put my architect's hat on and look at it, a big part of it is the lack of interaction with people. Whether it's your peers or whether it's, even strangers. If you're taking the dog for a walk and waving to somebody across the street is not quite the same as having a robust conversation or figuring out what that means. So I think it's important for all of us to really kind of understand that's a basic human need, that need to interact. And then what architects can do in their work is really provide those spaces, allow those things to occur. I'm going to talk a little bit about life in the Capitol, and we'll do that a little later. But in general, it's the same sort of thing as anything else. It's more work probably gets done in the hallways of the Capitol, bumping into somebody semi-unexpectedly than any of the prepared meetings and the things we spend all our time getting ready to do, and the arguments or discussions that we have on the floor. So with that, I think I'm going to call up a couple slides if I can get the share screen right, and we will be right back. All right, Betsy, are we up? Can you see it? Okay, so we call this discourse space and the public good, and it's really kind of sort of melding a little things I talk about very often with architects in particular, and with young people, about how public service is sort of integral to what architects are and kind of what they do. So no, it's not. There we go. So let me try to go back with it. So public good. So, I think what we strive for as people literally is to we get a lot of satisfaction when we can do things that really make a difference in other people's lives. So, public sector work that you do outside of your profession, outside your school, are things that really require you to be both a servant and a leader, literally at the same time. And it requires empathy, it requires understanding people and what they're do. Awareness is a huge part of it, just being literally aware of your surroundings and being able to read various people. As a leader and a servant, you need to conceptualize things, and you need to be persuasive in the way that you can make a case and do things. And lastly, you have to be convinced, you have to be willing to be a steward to make these things continue to happen. So I think we can all say, and I can say certainly from my life experience, that building community is probably the biggest thing we can do in our lives, not just as architects, but as citizens. But we have to do it with the idea of being pragmatic at the same time, things that are actually doable, which is not always easy. So the mind of an architect, literally is the idea of the both and education and training, the way that you're taught to be an architect, the way that you're taught to practice, the way that you design really needs to take in everything about it. You really need to learn as much as you can about what it is you're trying to do, and then be able to figure out how to do it, both and. So you're an artist, but you're also a technician. You're a planner, but also you're a builder. I always talk about the beautiful thing about architects, particularly in government, architectural thinking, is that it allows you to keep the big picture in mind while sweating the details. I can't tell you how many times I've been in meetings in the Capitol where it goes off on a tangent and people can't bring it back to where the conversation kind of needs to be. So as an architect, you have the ability to form an idea and literally to complete a project, which we know is a major undertaking. And lastly, you're a business person. You're involved in a practice of architecture. That's a business, but you're also a responsible citizen, and that means all sorts of things. Everything from confronting climate change to, being able to create buildings that really make sense for for people. So all that being said, in terms of, I just want to go through, since it's an architecture lecture, and I don't get to give them very often, I'm going to go through a couple slides of my former work, just to show some pretty pictures. When I was a young architect right out of graduate school, I went to work for Venturi Scott Brown and Associates in Philadelphia, and spent 16 years there. I left as a senior associate. This is just a kind of a sort of the variety of things that we worked on, everything from an orchestra hall in Philadelphia up here. This is a performing arts center in Princeton, at a private school. This is the State Aquarium and Children's Garden over in Camden. This is up at Bard College. A bunch of different things. Another odd thing in my career, I spent 8 years with the Disney company as my main client. So this was a Reedy Creek Emergency Services, which is basically the fire station for Disney World. This is a corner bank and celebration in Newtown, a McDonald's, which I put this in here because this was probably my first real political act, was that I used to sit in the middle of a conference table with all the McDonald's folks on one side and all the Disney folks on another. So you can imagine what that table was like. We did a lot of work out in California. This was a project that Claudia and I did together when we were both at Venturi's. It's a Frank G. Wells building, which is a studio production building on the movie lot in Burbank. Giant film reels, Klieg lights in the interior. This floor pattern actually is based on the San Carlo Quattro Fontane, the Borromini Church in Rome, with the interlocking squares, interlocking crosses, hexagons, and octagons. You can see it there, the same pattern in the floor of the main lobby. These are just kind of fun. One of the first things we did when Claudia and I opened up our practice was we did some work down at Widener University, and we got asked to be in a design competition for a new residence hall. And this was funny because competitions don't usually work this way, but we won the competition and then they actually built it, which was a nice thing. I bring this one up too because it was, the whole idea about this project was that you had a large floor plate. It was a big, large building, but you wanted students to interact together at the same time. So we forced all the circulation through the middle of the building. So to come into your room, you had to come into this kind of glass box that sits in between the two different wings. And you can see it here on this sketch up here. The circulation really went right down through the middle of the courtyard and off this corner to go down to the athletic center and the fitness area. So we pulled the glass box up and we were able to kind of tuck underneath it and create this courtyard on one side. But the idea is that these interior spaces, where this is the main circulation stair, and all the lounges kind of worked off of that. So people were interacting as they went through their daily routine, and forced isn't necessarily the right word, but they were able to interact with their fellow students. Still a very successful project. This is just in for fun because it's a beautiful house in Swarthmore, which was almost net zero. But and then we also were selected to do a new science building at Cheney. We were actually hired to renovate the existing building, but during the course of it, we did a study and proved it was better off. They were better off building a new building, which we could do and do very efficiently and make work. We were able to literally site it on the campus where it made more sense for it to be. This is what it looked like after it was just finished. This is a green roof, which can be seen from the third floor and from top of this public space. Again, creating this public space that was glassy and see-through was much different than many of the buildings on that campus where you have a little door and a wall and people go through and come back out again. As a planetarium, which is a cool thing to do. Kind of fun brick patterns. This was like a diaper pattern that was a nod towards collegiate Gothic kind of brickwork with all these nice patterns and stripes and the like. This is that public space in the front with a major mural of a quasar on it, which is kind of fun. And then this is another one just for fun. This is a tiny house I did with my students at Drexel, which is, as you can see, we the kids designed it and we built it. So that was a fun project. In terms of our own work, you know, we done one of the big things we did was pro bono work. This is a fairly technical slide, but it shows this area here is the way the existing parking lot was originally laid out. We revised the parking lot, only lost about 5 spaces in order to create an amphitheater space and green space and stuff in the middle of town. So you can see it in this aerial view. This is when they do the farmer's market on the parking lot. You can see the amphitheater over here, which works next to the library, and the green space that's over here. It really has been very successful and creates this really beautiful area in the middle of Swarthmore. This is 4th of July in Swarthmore with pictures right after the parade where folks were all kind of hanging out. The walls were originally done as rammed earth, which was a lot of fun to do, involved a lot of people. But after about 8 years, they decided it was time to change. The walls are now made out of block, but they're fun. So the weird kind of left turn, getting involved in statewide politics. This decided to run back in 2018, really, and running for office is unlike anything I've ever done before. Over here, this is one of the negative mailers that my opponent mailed out about me, that I was a radical professor from Swarthmore, which was supposed to be a bad thing. So I don't know. This is Governor Wolf at an event we were at, and being a senator involves a lot of public speaking. So this is the Capitol building in Harrisburg, which if you've never been, you should go to and visit. It's a spectacular building. 1905. John Houston was a Philadelphia architect who designed it. And this is my office down here behind this little round window right there. And that's the view from my office looking out across Harrisburg. Senate chamber is quite amazing. They have all these murals, which are done by Violet Oakley, who is an artist who lived in Chestnut Hill for some time, and actually painted these in a barn in Mount Airy and in Philadelphia. My office is actually up on the other side of this kind of mural. Hard to see, but that actually says architecture as one of the arts of Pennsylvania. So it's kind of a fun thing. So in the Capitol building itself, it's a tripartite plan with a big rotunda in the middle, and the rotunda is really the public square, really for the Commonwealth. And off to the one side, off to the left, is the Senate wing. Off to the right is the House wing. The governor's offices are also down to the right, and the state Supreme Court is in the center, sort of behind. So these are issues where people literally come and yell about things, come and talk about things, have press conferences, do the like. The lower left-hand corner here, that's a picture of me during a press conference around a bill around the statute of limitations. We were trying to get we're trying to get pushed through to help victims of childhood sexual abuse. And in that picture, I'm literally pointing down the hallway because it's the Senate that was holding this up. And so people basically telling the people at the press conference, if you're upset about it, go talk to them down there, kind of thing. And it's interesting how when the building becomes something that it's almost like a diagram that kind of shows you how things work. I think it's often attributed to Winston Churchill that we shape buildings and then buildings shape us. So it really does, the way Houston laid the building out really works to this day, and in particular because of this public square that occurs in the middle. This is a rally around fair districts that was done before the last election, and what you can't see here is you had people all the way up on all the balconies looking over, and et cetera, et cetera. This is Governor Wolf. This is now Governor Shapiro. This is the current Speaker of the House, Mark Rossi, and this is Austin Davis, who's currently the Lieutenant Governor. So we get into funny places as we go through these things. So I guess what I'm gonna stop this screen sharing right here. So what I think is important for you to realize as students and as competitors in the competition is you have to understand basically what you're being asked about, understand what the kind of discourse is, and create spaces that are flexible enough to allow that to happen. And I would argue that incidental meetings are more important than actual meetings in terms of trying to do things. So creating stuff where people can just feel comfortable, people where can hang out. The one image back in the science building that showed that we have a kind of a giant window seat that's at the end of the hallway that actually has a little blackboard in it that allows people to write messages and leave notes or work on things. That's like one of the most popular spaces in that building because it's in the way but out of the way. You know, it's not where you would expect something to be. It's a both and thing, and it really is successful because you give people a view, you give people something that's not typical. It's a little awkward to sit on because it's really deep and it's wood and everything else, but that makes it all the more lovely. So I think with that, Betsy, I'm going to stop talking for a minute and see whether you have any questions for me if you want to try to wrap this up.
That was really great. And, having been to the Pennsylvania Capitol a number of times when serving on the AIA and serving as president, it is really an unbelievably spectacular building. I mean, the chandeliers and just regular lighting fixtures alone, look like they cost as much as most of our houses. And the murals.
The core and shell of that building came in on time and on budget. The interior, the interior fit out was 20 years late and 5,000% over budget. So,
and I don't know if I should bring this up at this moment, but as I recall, didn't the architect get caught installing some of those materials that were purchased for the state capitol in his house, and he went to jail, I believe?
Well, he did go to jail. I personally think he was a scapegoat for the inadequacies of the legislature, but
and that that could make a good book, probably.
He was a young man. He was in his early 30s when he won that competition.
Yeah. But it is just an amazing building, and it's quite huge, especially when you consider the additions that they put on, where you can walk inside without going outside. And so the number of places where you might encounter somebody that you need to talk to, in a very casual way, these incidental spaces that you mentioned, there are many opportunities for this. And, my experience there was that, yes, that happened a lot. And it was really great because, I would see, by my own representative in the stairwell, and then we would accomplish something, and we would work it out, and it's in the stairwell. I didn't even have an appointment, So
that's true. And the other part about it too is that our politics right now are so polarized between Democrats and Republicans that very often the only way to have a real conversation with one of my Republican colleagues is to have it in the hallway, or have it in between, or have it in the lunchroom, or whatever. When you do it on a formal way, everything gets so kind of stilted and sort of difficult. So that's a great thing. One of the other things too is that the Mercer tile floor is considered the largest art installation in the Commonwealth, and that whole main first floor of the Capitol is all done in Mercer tiles. And there's, I think, 200 different vignettes that are done in tile work that occur all over the. If you go and do the tour, they can actually give you a scavenger hunt to go find various things in the way the floor is depicted. And then the murals themselves are really they're unbelievable, but they're really they're a nod towards where the power of the Commonwealth really came from. So a lot of it's about exploitation of natural resources, a lot of things about oil, and the like. So it's something. And the Violet Oakley ones are the ones in the Senate in particular. I often feel like she's sitting there wagging her finger at all of us, kind of thing. It's,
So in the Senate, do all the Republicans sit on one side and Democrats on another, or are they arranged?
Yeah, no,
by region, or
there's a center aisle with 25 seats on each side, because there's 50 senators. And then you can tell who has the majority by how many, in this case, there are 3 Republicans sitting on the Democratic side of the aisle. So it's like literally it's a living diagram of the makeup of the Senate. One of the cool things too is that each desk, those desks, the building dates from 1906, and those desks were new in the building. I think mine's from 1910, but it has a list of every senator who sat in that particular seat, sort of thing. It's and there are, the seat I'm in now, which is pretty far over on the left, there's only a few Republicans. I can't imagine how large their majority must have been if they'd gotten people sitting that far over in the to the one side. So it is interesting, but it's definitely worth a visit if you haven't.
So, but that, that's a really good example of how one's position in space can influence, in this case, policy, and the ability or inability to have a dialogue and to have a reasonable, conversation about an issue. And, that is the Senate and the House are our seats of public discourse here in Pennsylvania and in every state capital.
They are, and then we have the rotunda between them that's the public square.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down. That was the public square of the place. And so, I would just invite everyone who's not in Pennsylvania, well, even those of you who are, but to come to Pennsylvania and see the State House, because it is really just unimaginable. And also thinking of how recently that was built. I'm using that term sort of loosely, but it's rather it's elaborate, and the materials are just really fine materials. Yeah. And these days we are forced to do a lot with drywall, and drive it, and stucco. Well, stucco is not a bad material, but anyway, okay. So thank you so much. We really appreciate your being here today and hearing your interpretation of issues that we are dealing with in our project. So thank you, Tim.
Best of luck to everyone. Thank you, Betsy.
Okay, thanks.